All right, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, we're looking at the 6th subtlety from the 30th gleam. This one focuses on the name Al-Qayyum. You see, the 30th gleam explains 6 of the greatest names of God, one by one. This is the 6th one, which is all about the name Al-Qayyum. God has 6 great names: Fard, Qayyum, Qudus, Adl, Hakam, and Fard. And this lesson is about Al-Qayyum. It was felt that this lesson would be a fitting follow-up to the 30th word. You know how the 30th word has 2 parts, right? The first is about the I, the ego, and the second is about atoms. When you think about the one who creates these atoms and sustains them in existence, it makes perfect sense that this lesson would follow that one. Now there's a disclaimer here. It says, these are incredibly important, deep, and vast matters concerning the greatest manifestation of the name Al-Qayyum. Since these ideas came to my heart spontaneously, like separate flashes of insight rather than in a structured way, and because they were written down as a very messy, rushed, unrevised first draft, there will certainly be flaws and disorganization in the wording and expression. You know, this itself is proof that these truths were written through inspiration. Think about it. It was left as a rough draft, written hastily, without revision. It means there was no later editing. It was left just as it came through inspiration. I remember a discussion we had about this once. Apparently it was a custom for authors to present their work this way. Instead of saying, I wrote this perfectly, they'd say, any flaws are my own. The truth is, there are no flaws. We see incredible eloquence in the RİSALE-İ Nur. Just extraordinary. But he says this so that if someone thinks they find a flaw, they can attribute it to him. That's how we see it. The Ustad is preemptively addressing any potential criticism. I mean, think about it. If we were writing a letter, back when people wrote a lot of letters, we'd mess up, tear it up, and rewrite it several times just to get it right. Yet these incredibly profound matters were written down in one go and left as they were. This shows they were written through inspiration. So, he says, because it's a rough draft, there will certainly be flaws and disorganization in the wording and expression. Another thing is, you know all the rules of literature they have now? Those can be very simplistic rules. The expressions in the RİSALE-İ Nur don't fit into that box. Someone might look at it according to those rules and see something missing. But from the perspective of true eloquence, God willing, the phrasing of the RİSALE-İ Nur is flawless. It goes on to say, you must forgive my faults for the sake of the beauty of the issues themselves. Then there's a warning. It says the points related to the greatest name are incredibly expansive and profound. It advises that especially with the section on Al-Qayyum, if you're not able to give it your full concentration, you should skip the first ray and start reading from the second. Because it deals with the material world, it gets very deep. And of course, not everyone will grasp every single aspect of every issue. I wonder if we can think of it this way. The Quran addresses the common person, right? The vast majority of people, maybe 80%, while the elite or learned are the other 20%. When you speak to the common person, the learned can also benefit. But if you only speak to the learned, the common person is left out. Most of the RİSALE-İ Nur is like that. Think of the 10th word or the supreme sign, it's for everyone. But a few parts, like the treatise on divine decree or the first ray here, are a bit more for those with a deeper knowledge because it gets into atoms and the concept of the ether, for instance. But he still says you'll get something out of it. You'll still benefit in some way. Not everyone will understand every issue from every angle, but everyone can take some share from it. There's a rule here. If something cannot be obtained in its entirety, it should not be abandoned entirely. It wouldn't be wise to give up just because you can't pick all the fruits from this spiritual garden. Welcome, Bestami. Glad you could make it. We have 2 Bestamis now. So, this is a principle to keep in mind when reading the RİSALE-İ Nur. If something cannot be obtained in its entirety, it should not be abandoned entirely. Imagine you walk into an orchard and they say, all the fruit is yours. Would you say, well, I can't possibly pick all of it, so I won't touch any of it? Of course not. Whatever you can gather in your hands or your basket is enough for you. It's the same with reading the RİSALE. You might think, I have to understand every single sentence and every word. Well, it's great if you do, but even if you only grasp a few sentences, that might be enough to save your faith. It could be like a spark, a flash of light in your world. Even if you don't understand it all, the part you do understand is enough for you. What does he say elsewhere? We should be content with the amount we understand and strive to increase it by studying it again. You read it, you understand a few things. Be happy with that. Then go back, read the same part again, and try to deepen your understanding. That's the principle. So it's not smart to walk away from this spiritual garden just because you can't pick every piece of fruit. The brothers are here now. Maybe open the door for some fresh air. Yes, whatever you can pick is pure profit. Why? Because every meaning you grasp is related to faith. You know, it mentions in the Supreme Sign, there's a saying from Imam Rabbani, I would prefer the clear unveiling of a single matter of faith over thousands of spiritual raptures, ecstasies, and miracles. Think about that. He's not even saying a whole pillar of faith. He's saying just one single issue of faith becoming clear to him is more preferable than having thousands of miracles or spiritual experiences. These great figures really set the standard for us. The issues related to the greatest name are so vast they cannot be encompassed, and so subtle they cannot be seen by the intellect, especially regarding the names Al-Hayy, the ever-living, and Al-Kayyum, and particularly how life alludes to the pillars of faith and the signs from life pointing to the pillar of divine decree, and especially the first ray of Al-Kayyum. Not everyone's mind can reach them, but no one is left without a share. At the very least, so many of God's names are mentioned, right? You end up reflecting on those names. There are so many declarations of faith, and you get to repeat them. Ultimately, it's a lesson in faith. No one leaves empty-handed. It will definitely strengthen your faith. And is it important for faith to be strong? Yes, it's crucial. Why? Because, as it says in the RİSALE, the importance of strengthening faith, which is the key to eternal happiness, is immense. It's interesting how in the RİSALE, you'll have a question pop into your mind from one sentence, and the very next sentence answers it. For example, why is strengthening faith so valuable? Because faith is the key to eternal happiness. When you read that, another question might come up. How is faith a key to eternal happiness? Well, the Quran says, give glad tidings to those who believe and do righteous deeds, that for them will be gardens beneath which rivers flow. So, what's the condition for paradise? Belief and righteous deeds. And performing righteous deeds is also tied to faith. To be able to perform your worship, to pray your prayers, to fast, to have piety, to abandon sin and fulfill your obligations, all of this depends on faith. If a person's faith develops to the point where they are conscious that God is present and watching them at every moment, that He created this entire universe, then worship naturally follows. So as your faith grows, you start to live a life of worship. You have both faith and worship. If you live this way and pass into the hereafter, where will God place you? In his paradise. So faith and righteous deeds are the key to paradise. And paradise is a vast, eternal, everlasting kingdom. How is paradise described? 1 hour of life in paradise is better than 1,000 years of happy life in this world. A place like that is given to you by God for all eternity. And the key to that door is faith and righteous deeds. So anything that strengthens our faith becomes incredibly precious. If paradise is precious, its key, faith, is precious. And the lessons that strengthen faith are therefore also precious. Coming to these lessons, being present, participating, all of it becomes precious. The importance of strengthening faith, which is the key to eternal happiness, is immense. Even a single atom's worth of increase in the strength of faith is a treasure. When you weigh things, some are weighed by the kilo, some by the truckload, and some by the gram, right? The more valuable something is, the smaller the unit of measurement. Faith is weighed by the atom's worth. Even a tiny particle of it is immensely valuable. If a person understands just one sentence, and a single meaning from that sentence dawns on them, that's that atom's worth. And it has immense value. Even a single atom's worth of increase in the strength of faith is a treasure. Imam Rabbani, Ahmadi Faruqi, says, in my view, the unveiling of a single small matter of faith is preferable to hundreds of spiritual ecstasies and miracles. See, he says it here again. Imam Rabbani, the renewer of the second millennium. What does unveiling mean? Well, think of it like this. You learn the principle that even a needle cannot be without a maker. Then you think, wait, this tiny piece of metal, could it really exist without a maker? No, of course not. That moment when you truly understand it, when it clicks for you, that's the unveiling. It's when the matter becomes truly clear in your own world. Some people say, oh, if you wait 1,000,000 years, a needle could form on its own. But would it? Even if it sat there for 10 million years, it wouldn't happen, right? A maker has to make it. When you grasp that, that sentence has been unveiled for you. Having sentences like this unveiled in your mind is, as he says, preferable to hundreds of spiritual ecstasies and miracles. The words of these great figures are proofs for us. They are authoritative. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, in his hand is the dominion of all things. To him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth, and there is not a thing but with us are the stores thereof. There is no moving creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. These 4 verses all describe God's sustaining power, his Kayyumiyah. In his hand is the dominion of all things. To him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. There is nothing in the universe whose treasuries are not with him. Everything is sent and given by him. There is no creature on earth, from sheep and goats to chickens, but that he holds it in his absolute dominion, managing and providing for it. These verses all point to the divine self-subsistence. He says, a subtlety from these verses, and the greatest name, or the second of the 2 lights of the greatest name, or the 6th of the 6 lights of the greatest name, that is a supreme manifestation of the name Al-Qayyum, appeared to my mind in the month of Dhul Qa'dah. So we can see the name Al-Qayyum as the greatest name itself. Or if you look at Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum as 2 lights, it's the second one. Or if you look at the 6 names I mentioned earlier, it's the 6th of those 6 lights. And he's talking about a supreme manifestation, Silve-i Azam, of this name. The word manifestation, Silv, is very important. What is it? Think about the sun. When its light hits a mirror, a small image of the sun appears in the mirror. That's a silv, a reflection. Because of that reflection, the mirror shines. So he's saying that the effects and results of the name Al-Qayyum manifesting in the universe became clear to him. The work and actions of the name Al-Qayyum throughout the cosmos appeared to his mind. He says it appeared in the month of Dhul Qa'dah. Does mentioning the specific month mean something? When something is really important to you, you remember the date, the time, the place, right? The fact that these events, these unveilings, these lessons on faith were so precious to the Ustad that he notes the month, the place, Eskishahir prison, and even the time shows how much he valued them. Because for a name of God to manifest and its reflection to be seen is a major event. It appeared to his mind in the month of Dhul Qa'dah. Due to the restrictions upon me in Eskishahir prison, this was written in prison. What does a person normally think about in prison? How can I get out of here as soon as possible? They're thinking about lawyers, judges, their defense, but the Ustad is in prison preoccupied with the greatest name of God, and God inspires these truths to him there. There's a story about Zubayr Abi, one of the Ustad's students. The other brothers asked him to write a legal defense so they could get out. He did, and when he saw the Ustad in the prison, the Ustad asked him how he was spending his time. Zubayr said, "We've prepared our defense." And the Ustad replied, "And here I was, thinking my Zubayr was busy with the truths of faith." Zubayr was devastated. He felt so ashamed and told the others, "You've ruined me. Look what you made me do." Due to the restrictions upon me in Eskishehir prison, I will certainly not be able to fully explain that supreme light. However, since Imam Ali, may God be pleased with him, in his poems identified the greatest name with 6 names, which he called by the exalted name Sekine, and since in his Chelchelutiye he considered these 6 names to be the greatest and most important among many other majestic names, and since he gave us consolation through his miraculous foreknowledge within his discussion of them, we too will now point to that supreme light of Al-Qayyum, just as we did with the previous 5 names, with at least a brief explanation in 5 rays. The first ray, the creator of this universe, the Lord of Majesty, is Al-Qayyum. What does that mean? The creator, the one who brought this universe into being from nothing, who created all the atoms, stars, galaxies, the earth, everything, that God is Al-Qayyum. It means he is self-subsisting, eternal, and everlasting. Self-subsisting means his existence comes from himself. Something either exists in its own right or because of something else, right? A tree, for example, doesn't exist on its own. It exists because God created it. But God's existence is from himself, from his own essence. Our existence depends on God, and our continuation also depends on God. But God's existence and continuation are inherent to his essence, and everything else exists and endures through him. They are sustained by him. They continue to exist and persist in being because of him. All the atoms, stars, trees, animals, mountains, stones, everything in the universe continues to exist because of God. If that sustaining connection were to be cut off from the universe for even a single moment, the universe would be annihilated. That connection, that dependence on God's sustaining power, if he were to withdraw it for an instant, the universe couldn't stand. It would vanish. If that sustaining connection were cut off for even a single moment, the universe would be destroyed. Furthermore, along with being the self-subsisting sustainer, that majestic being is, as the mighty Quran declares, there is nothing whatever like unto him. So, we understand that God is Al-Qayyum, and that the universe is sustained by him. Now another crucial point from the Quran: there is nothing whatever like unto him. What does this mean? It means there is no parallel, no equal, no likeness, and no partner to him, not in his essence, not in his attributes, and not in his actions. There is no likeness to God's essence. For instance, one description of his essence is that he is the necessarily existent, his being eternal, everlasting, self-existent. There's no likeness to that. His attributes, like his infinite knowledge and power, his ability to see everything at once, there is no other being with infinite attributes like that. And in his actions, he manages all the atoms and all the stars simultaneously. He performs limitless actions at once. In this respect, too, there is nothing like him. So for a sacred being who holds the entire universe, with all its affairs and qualities, in his grasp of lordship, and who directs, governs, and nurtures it with perfect order, like a single household or palace, for such a being, a peer, a likeness, a partner, or an equal is impossible and absurd. We can't even conceive of the size of the universe, so how can we begin to imagine the greatness of the being who created and manages it? He is infinitely great. A being of infinite greatness cannot have an equal, a partner, or a likeness. It's impossible. Yes, a being for whom creating stars is as easy as creating atoms. Think about that. The sun is a star, right? It's one, 3 million times bigger than our Earth. And the sun is just a small star. For God, creating a star that huge is as easy as creating a single atom. For him, the biggest thing is as easy to handle as the smallest thing. For us, we can manage something small, but as it gets bigger, it gets harder. For God Almighty, the smallest and the largest are equally easy. For him, no single thing gets in the way of another, and no single action prevents another action. For us, this happens all the time. If you're studying, can you clean the house at the same time? No. If you're cleaning, you can't eat. If you're eating, you can't do something else. A person can generally only do one thing at a time. A second action is blocked by the first, but God Almighty creates the actions and movements of 8 billion people at the same time. He provides for them all at once. He gives life to all the animals at once. He performs countless, not just 2 or 3, countless actions simultaneously, and none of them interfere with any other. And in his sight, limitless individuals are as present as a single individual. How many people can you see at once? I can see maybe 3, 10, 20 people. But if there were 100, I couldn't really see them all. Even if they were right in front of me, I couldn't register them all. I can perceive maybe 3 to 5 people at once, without getting confused. But in God's sight, all people, all animals, every single member of every species, all the atoms, all the stars, he sees them all at the same instant. Limitless individuals are present before him as if they were one, and he hears all sounds at once. When one person is talking and another starts, we say, "Hold on, be quiet, let this person speak first." We do it in turns. We can't even listen to 2 people at the same time. God Almighty hears the voices and prayers of all 8 billion people at once, without any interference, and he answers all of their countless needs at once. If you ask how I can know this, well, just look around. Look at a tree with its fruit, branches, and leaves. It's orderly, balanced, and artful. He's creating that. And the next tree, with its own unique fruit, order, flowers, and insects, it's also artful. He's creating that too. The atoms are also artfully and orderly managed. Everything everywhere is executed with perfect art. This proves that he can do it all at once, just as he brings forth the entire spring season across the whole earth at once. So, a being for whom, as testified by all the order and balance in the universe's beings, nothing, no state, is outside the circle of his will and volition, who, while being in no place, is present everywhere and in every place with his power and knowledge. This is something to reflect on. He is not in any place. God, in his essence, is not contained by space, because a creator cannot be inside his creation. God, the necessarily existent, is transcendent of space, but he is everywhere through the manifestation of his power and knowledge, because everywhere an act of God's art is taking place, an action is occurring. For example, in the creation of an apple or a flower or an insect, his power and knowledge are manifesting right there. So God is here with his power and knowledge, and he is over there with them too, because art is appearing everywhere. He is present everywhere with his power and knowledge, and while everything is infinitely distant from him, he is infinitely close to everything. Such a being, an ever-living, self-subsisting, majestic being, of course cannot have in any respect a peer, a parallel, a partner, a helper, an opposite, or a rival. It is impossible. For a being who can do all this, it's impossible. We can only look at his sacred affairs through parables and analogies. So if he has no likeness, we can't understand him by comparison. How then are we to know God? Only through parables and analogies can we look at his sacred affairs. God's essence has no likeness. If it did, we could say, he is like this. But the universe is created, so anything in it is by definition created, and God is uncreated. So a likeness is impossible. You don't even need to look for one. But we can look at his actions. In terms of his actions, there are simple analogies, like human actions or the actions of the sun. There can be an example on the level of action, but not on the level of essence. All the analogies and comparisons in the RİSALE-İ Nur are of this type. So for such a peerless, necessarily existent being, whose existence is from himself, necessary, while his non-existence is impossible, unlike the universe, whose existence is possible, and non-existence is also possible. We exist now, but we could cease to exist. That's possible. Why? Because we exist only because God creates us. If he stops creating us, we disappear. So matter can either exist or not exist. It's contingent. But since God's existence is from his own essence, his non-existence is impossible, and his existence is necessary. A being who is immaterial and transcendent of space, for whom manifestation or division is in every way impossible, for whom change and alteration are inconceivable, and for whom need and weakness are outside the realm of possibility, for such a sacred being, to mistake some of the manifestations that appear on the pages of the universe and in the levels of existence for that sacred being himself, and to attribute the functions of divinity to some of his creatures. This is what some misguided people have done. Some of them have attributed the works of that majestic being to nature. This is a very important point. They see these manifestations of a sacred being in the universe, and think of the surface of the ocean. The sun shines down on it in all its glory. The ocean glitters like the sun. Now, if someone doesn't know that the light is coming from the sun, they might say, look, this ocean is a sun. It's shining. They see the reflection and think it originates from the thing that's reflecting it. Or when God's infinite power manifests in the universe, someone who doesn't know where that power comes from says, look, there's power here. These things must be powerful. Or when God's infinite knowledge is manifest, they say, look how orderly the atoms move. They must have knowledge. When they see the manifestation, they mistake it for the source. That's their error. But how can simple, ordinary atoms and particles possess infinite knowledge, infinite power, and infinite wisdom? It's impossible. Let me read that again. Some misguided people, mistaking some of the manifestations of a sacred being for that sacred being himself, have attributed the works of that majestic being to nature. And when you say nature, what do you mean? The earth, mountains, rocks. But are mountains and rocks intelligent and conscious? No. But when they see the art there, they mistake the art for the artist. But nature is the art, not the artist. This will come up in the definition of nature. However, as has been proven with decisive arguments in numerous places in the RİSALE-İ Nur, nature is an art of God. It cannot be the artist. What is nature? It is God's art. An apple, for example, is God's art. It is not the artist, or a butterfly, a rose, a honeybee. They are God's art, not the artist. Nature is an art of God. It cannot be the artist. It is a divine book. It cannot be the writer. It is a design. It cannot be the designer. It is a ledger. It cannot be the bookkeeper. It is a set of laws. It cannot be the power that enforces them. In school they teach us about laws, right? The law of gravity and so on. They present these laws as if they are powerful forces in themselves. But laws don't have power. They are just the orderly system that God follows in governing the universe. Nature is a set of laws. It cannot be the power. It is a template. It cannot be the source. You know, like a stencil. You put it down and draw with a pencil, and if it's a stencil of a bird, you get a bird on the paper. Let's call it a mold. Nature is a mold. It's not the one who made the mold, who pours the material, and who creates the thing according to the mold. You ask, why are the petals of this flower shaped this way? And they say, well, that's just how roses are. That's their mold. As if the mold itself is the creator. It is receptive. It is acted upon. It cannot be the actor. What does this mean? Say a carpenter is making a table. The materials of the table are receptive to the carpenter's art and intervention. The carpenter works on them. They are not the actors. If you leave them alone, they just sit there. The actor makes it. The material is just the subject of that action. Nature, matter, atoms, particles, they are all the subjects of the actions brought about by God's power. If we just brought some wood and put it here, it wouldn't become a table. The wood can't be the actor. To be an actor, you need knowledge, will, power, and many other things. The wood doesn't have any of that. Only the craftsman does. He can shape it into something artful. Think about all the atoms in our bodies. They are all mindless, unconscious, lifeless matter. They don't have knowledge or power. Their orderly and harmonious movements cannot be expected to come from them. It means an actor is directing them this way. If that actor wasn't directing them, they couldn't move this way on their own. They are the recipients of God's manifestation. It is an order. It cannot be the one who orders. Look at the arrangement of these sofas. There's a simple order here, right? The orderer is the one who put them in this order. Did the sofas arrange themselves this way? No. The order exists. Nature is order, but it is not the maker of that order. It is a set of natural laws. It cannot be the lawgiver. What does this mean? A flower, a bee, a tree, they all have so many principles governing their shape, their function, and so on. These are taught in science books. They teach the rules and laws God has placed within creation. Nature is just these rules and laws, these principles, established by God. It is not the one who makes and enforces those principles. If, hypothetically, the creation of even the smallest living being, like a honeybee, were to be delegated to nature, and it were told, make this, then, as has been proven with conclusive arguments in many places in the RİSALE-İ Nur, it would be necessary for nature to possess molds, or perhaps even machines, equal in number to all the limbs and organs of that small living being, just to be able to do the job. Think about construction workers pouring concrete for a pillar. They have to build a formwork, a mold. Without it, could they create that shape? No, the concrete won't just hold that shape on its own. They have to build a mold, pour the concrete inside, and that's how it gets its shape. Now, every animal, every flower, every plant, every fruit has a shape, right? It has a mold. Your eyes, your nose, your teeth, they all have molds. For those atoms to take on that specific shape, how would they do it? The mold would have to be either physical or non-physical. Since nature's mold isn't non-physical, it would have to be physical. So there would have to be physical molds to give the atoms those shapes. The ear has a specific shape. Could atoms moving randomly create that shape? No. They would have to be formed by a mold, so nature would need to have molds. And that's just for the external shape. Think about all the complex systems inside. You'd need separate molds for all of them. Then, a group of misguided people, known as materialists, sensing the supreme manifestation of divine creativity and lordly power within the orderly transformations of atoms. Orderly transformations? What's an example? A cow eats grass and straw, right? And from the taps of its udders comes pure white nutritious milk. What happened? The grass and straw it ate were transformed. They were fermented and turned into milk. A bucket of grass and straw became a bucket of milk. Is that a simple event? It's incredible. In that transformation, the grass and straw disappeared, and in their place came milk. They are completely different things. Only their atomic components might be related, but you know the difference between straw and milk. Within that transformation lies divine creativity. God's amazing act of creation is there. They sense this, sensing the supreme manifestation of divine creativity and lordly power within the orderly transformations of atoms. They feel that something incredible is happening, but not knowing where that manifestation came from. They see this amazing event, this creation, but since they don't know God, or don't want to, they don't know its source. And not being able to comprehend where the universal force coming from, that manifestation of self-sufficient power, was being directed from, they imagined matter and force to be eternal, and began to attribute the works of God to atoms and their motions. They look and see atoms moving. The atoms are moving, that's why this happened, they say. When they can't see anything else, they just conclude, well, I guess they must be doing it. And the Ustad says, good heavens, how can people be so boundlessly ignorant? To attribute the actions and works of a being who, while being transcendent of space, is present everywhere in the creation of everything in a way that he sees, knows, and directs all things, to attribute these acts to lifeless, blind, unconscious, will-less atoms tossed about by the storms of chance? Anyone with even a speck of reason should see how ignorant and superstitious that idea is. These people, because they reject absolute oneness, fall into an absolute limitless multiplicity, because they can't fit the eternal existence and creatorship, which are exclusive properties of the one sacred being, into their warped minds. They are forced by their own worldview to accept the eternal existence and even the divinity of those countless lifeless atoms. It's not because it's logical, but because they are forced into it. If you deny God, you have to come up with some other explanation. Look at the infinite depths of this ignorance. The manifestation in the atoms, however, has made the community of atoms into a well-ordered and magnificent army by the power, might, and command of the necessarily existent one. When you think of an army, you think of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers moving together in an orderly, disciplined way, right? All the atoms and particles in a single body or a living creature, more numerous and in a more incredible order than any army, can be seen as the soldiers of the Supreme Commander, God. If for a single second the command and power of that Supreme Commander were withdrawn, that vast, lifeless, unconscious community would become like a disorganized mob and perhaps be annihilated altogether. Glory be to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Verily it is you, the all-knowing, the all-wise.